Hey everyone, welcome to a new kind of video. I'm Alan Stark, and this is the first part of my series on making stick figure animations from start to finish. In this series, I'll walk you through every single step, from setting up the project to animating, adding physics, sound, and even tackling some of the challenges I run into along the way. You'll get to see how I create animations like Alan Becker does. I've decided to keep editing to a minimum in these videos so I can upload them faster for you guys. This is all for you, and I hope you'll enjoy watching these tutorials. The goal of this series? To create the exact animation you're watching right now. So, let's jump in. If you're new to my channel and you're not sure what software I use, I definitely recommend checking out this video over on the side. So here we are in Moho, and the first thing I need to do to get started is import my character into the software. I'll be sharing this stick figure character for you to download on Discord and Telegram. Next, our character needs a background. Since our animation is about animation versus animator, I'm going to take a full screenshot of the studio using the Light Shot tool and save it in the Assets folder. Now let's import the image. All right, the background is set up, but now we need to cover up the middle part of it. Remember to place the background on the lowest layer so it's below everything else. Above the background layer, we had a layer already, and on that, we'll draw a shape using the Draw Shape tool. Let's change the shape color to pure white. And as you can see, now we've got a nice clean background. Now let's group the background layer and the white layer we created, and we'll name it BG, or just background. After setting up the background, it's time to work on our stick figure character. Now this character is already made, but we're going to change its name to Nox. Next, let's change the color of the stick figure, starting with the head layer. I'll pick the color I want. I'm going to choose this color. I'll copy the color code and use it for the other layers as well. I'll just go through all the layers and change the colors by copying and pasting. All right, now we've got a stick figure and a background ready to go. Let's move on to the next step. After selecting the pen tool, you'll notice that the cursor changes to a special shape with a circle around it, and we need to draw that. So first, let's take a screenshot of the screen using Light Shot and save the image. Now we'll import that saved image into Moho so we can draw the mouse shape. To draw this shape, we'll create a new layer. I've already made a layer, so I'll just select that one to draw the shape on. Using the Add Point tool, you can draw any shape, and we'll use this tool to create that specific shape. With the Transform Point tool, I'll adjust the points I drew to make the shape more accurate. Now I'll change the color of the shape to black, turn on the stroke, decrease the stroke amount, and change its color to white so it matches the desired shape exactly. I'm going to make a copy of the shape and move it to the other side. Now let's make another copy for the top part and one more copy for the bottom part. Now we'll draw the middle shape using the Draw Shape tool. Let's find the center of the layer. And now I'll draw the circle around the shape. I'll change the circle's color to something that matches the original shape. And that's it. Now the pen tool shape is ready to go and I can start using it. I'll delete the reference image since I don't need it anymore. I'm going to adjust the size of the shape to match the stroke size of the stick figure, since I'll be using this tool to draw the stick figure in the animation. Now let's get into animating and drawing the stick figure. I want the pen tool shape to move from the top of the screen down to the head of the stick figure and start drawing it. So I'll move the layer to the top, and then a few frames later, move it down to the stick figure's head to create the animation. I also want the stick figure to be invisible until the pen reaches its head. So in frame 0, I'll hide the stick figure, and a few frames later, I'll make it visible again. This way, when the pen reaches the head, the stick figure will appear. Now, I want to animate the body being drawn step by step. Starting with the head layer, I'll use the stroke exposure tool and set the stroke to 0. Then, I'll press Ctrl F to add keyframes for other actions like moving the shape, etc. One frame later, I'll add all the keyframes again, and a few frames after that, I'll set the stroke exposure to 100. So the shape gets drawn between frame 20 and frame 41. A few frames later, at frame 54, I want the next part of the body to start being drawn. I'll go to the body layer, set the stroke exposure to 0 at frame 54, and press Ctrl F to add all the keyframes. But as you can see, the body starts being drawn in the earlier frames, so I'll copy the keyframes where the stroke is 0 and paste them at the start of the animation. This way, the drawing starts at frame 54, just like I want. A few frames later, I'll set the stroke exposure to 100, so the body gets drawn from frame 54 to this new frame. I'll adjust the timing of the keyframes so there's less delay between the head being drawn and the body being drawn. You can also move your keyframes around to match the timing and speed you want for your animation. And I'll repeat the same process for animating the other parts of the body. Now it's time for the right arm, and I want the right arm to start drawing a few frames after the body is complete. I'll set the stroke exposure to 0, just like with the previous layers, and I'll copy the keyframes and paste them at the start of the animation so that the stroke exposure stays at 0 from the beginning until I'm ready for it to draw. I'll set the stroke exposure to 100 at frame 88, but as you can see, the arm is made up of two parts. So I'll first select the upper part of the arm and set it to 100. Then a frame or two later, I'll set the lower part of the arm to 100 as well. So the lower part gets drawn right after the upper part. I'll do the exact same thing for the left arm and the legs. All right, now the animation of the stick figure being drawn with the pen is complete. The elbows look a bit sharp, so I'll use the Smart Bone tool, which I explained in previous videos, to smooth out the elbows. Now let's move on to animating the mouse or pen tool in Moho. I'll select the mouse layer and use the Transform Layer tool to animate it frame by frame, just like this. After the head is drawn, I'll move the mouse to the start of the body. Keep in mind, there needs to be a slight pause before starting to draw the body. Just like when you're drawing on paper, you press the pen down first before making a stroke. So I'll add 1 or 2 frames of stillness here. I'll do the same for the other parts of the body. A few frames of pause, then I'll start drawing that part. All right, after drawing all the body parts, I move the mouse to this position. As you can see, the animation of this part looks really smooth and polished. Now I want the mouse to change from the pen tool to a cursor and click on the stick figure, making a menu pop up. I'll take a screenshot of this menu and import it into the software. I'll go to frame 0 and adjust the size of the menu to my desired dimensions. After importing any image, make sure to double-click on the image layer, go to the Image tab, and check the higher quality rendering option so the image looks sharp when rendering and exporting the animation. I'll do the same for the background too. Now I'll hide the menu layer until I'm ready to make it appear at the right moment. Next, I want the mouse to change into a cursor after it finishes drawing the stick figure, and click on the stick figure to open the menu. So, I'll take a screenshot of the mouse in cursor form and import that image into the software to trace the desired shape. I'll create a new layer for this cursor shape and get ready to draw it. I'll use the Add Point tool to draw the shape easily. Then use the Create Shape tool to fill it in with color. After that, I'll select the shape and check the stroke option to create a white stroke around the cursor. Then I'll repeat the process for the other shape. First, I'll place the points using Add Point. Then use Transform Point to adjust them so they match the shape exactly. We color our shape with the Create Shape tool and add a stroke, and that's it. Now we have a new cursor. You might run into the issue where, after drawing a small shape, it looks blurry and unclear. This happens when you're not on the layer of that shape. Don't worry, this won't affect the final render. The shape will appear clear in the final output. But if you want to see the shape clearly while working, there are options you can toggle on and off to make adjustments to the workspace. I've made the cursor shape larger so you can see it better, and as you can see, when I turn off CPU caching, the shape looks much clearer, even when I'm not on that specific layer. Now that I've completed the shape I want, I'll delete the reference image. I'll rename the layer to Cursor and rename the previous one, which was the pen shape, to Pen Cursor. All right, now that we have two mouse shapes, let's move on to animating them. As you can see, the cursor shape is visible from the very beginning of the animation. So I'll go to frame 0 and hide it until the moment I want it to appear. I want the cursor to appear right after the stick figure is drawn and when the mouse moves away from the stick figure. So in this frame, I'll make the cursor shape visible by checking the Visible option and then position it exactly over the previous shape. After that, I'll hide the previous shape, the pen cursor layer, so the transition happens. You can see how it looks just like when we use shortcuts in software, and the mouse changes depending on the tool selected. Now, the cursor needs to move over to the stick figure and click on it. I'll select the cursor layer, add a still frame a few frames after the cursor appears, and then move the cursor to the stick figure a few frames later. I think the mouse movement is a bit too fast, so I'll move the keyframe farther along to slow it down and get the speed just right. A few frames later, I'll create a keyframe by clicking on the layer, and then I'll go to the menu layer that I previously imported, double-click on it, and check the Visible option so that the menu appears in this frame. I'll move the menu, bring its layer above the stick figure layer, and position it right at the tip of the cursor so it looks natural. So far, everything looks good. As you know, when you open a menu on a computer and hover over an option, a light-colored effect shows which option is selected. I want to recreate that effect here. First, I'll go to frame 0, group the menu layer, and create a new layer for the hover effect I mentioned. By holding the Control key and right-clicking, I'll set a starting point here. Next, I want to change the text on this menu. So I'll create a new text layer and type Create Avatar. I'll change the color to match the menu text and pick an appropriate font. I'm not sure what font the menu uses, so it might take a little time to find the right one. For now, I'll leave it as it is and move the text into position, placing it over the new text on the menu. Now I want to hide the original new text. I'll go to frame 0, select the layer I created earlier for this purpose, and draw a shape to cover it. I'll hit the space bar to return to the starting point I set earlier. At this frame, I'll position the shape over the menu, right under the new text I added. Then I'll go back to frame 0 and hide both the text layer and the shape layer. I'll return to the starting point, and at frame 198, when the menu appears, I'll make the shape layer visible and match its color to the menu. Then I'll make the new text visible. Now the menu looks just the way I want it, but I still feel like the font doesn't match the menu's font. Let me go and find a better one.
2,000 years later.
Well, I spent quite a bit of time searching for the right font, but couldn't find it. But anyway, the menu is complete, and now I want the cursor to move and click on the Create Avatar text. I'll go to the cursor layer and create a keyframe at frame 206. A few frames later, I'll move the cursor layer and position it over the Create Avatar text. By default, every new project has 216 frames, but you can easily increase that number from here if needed. All right, let's check how the animation looks so far. I'll adjust the frames to make the cursor movement smoother and more natural. Now it's time to create an effect on the menu. I'll go to the shape layer that I created earlier and enlarge the shape like this. To change the color and create an effect, I'll double-click on the shape layer and check the Animated Effects option. Then I'll select the shape at this frame and change its color. As you can see, keyframes are automatically created to show the color transition effect. I'll copy the first keyframes, which are the ones with the dark color, and paste them near the keyframes with the lighter color. And as you can see, the effect worked perfectly. All right, that's it for this part. We'll pick up right where we left off in the next one. Don't worry, it'll be out sooner than you think. Until then, see you in the next video.